Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. The division championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Hello and welcome to Access to Democracy. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Raker, your host. Today our topic is Who Cares for Animals at the Zoo? Sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, doesn't it? Well, here to talk with us about who cares for animals at the Minnesota Zoo is Kurt Heizmann, Director of Animal Care. Kurt, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to some of the things that you're going to be sharing with us, but before we get to that, tell our viewers a little bit about how you got interested in this career, what you did to prepare for this career, and then we'll get into some of the details of your role and other things relative to the zoo.
Of course. So I'm originally from Chicago. Grew up in Chicago with some really great institutions to visit as a kid. Brookfield Zoo, Lincoln Park, Shedd Aquarium. And really those type of institutions were instrumental in my love for animals and being inspired by the natural world and really just kind of being awestruck by some of the incredible species that we have on our planet. And so for me, that kind of kickstarted my interest as a student, as a kid, kind of moving through my academics. And I was always really focused on and interested on biology, specifically marine biology. The aquarium was really one of the top places that I loved to visit as a kid. And so I went to college for general biology and decided to do an internship at that very aquarium that I visited as a kid, Shedd Aquarium in Chicago. And was fortunate enough to, after the internship, to begin working there. I worked there for about 15 years, working in the marine mammal department, and eventually getting to a position where I was overseeing the programs with sea lions, dolphins, beluga whales, among other species. And then I've been up here at the Minnesota Zoo now for about a year and a half, looking kind of to, always looking for an opportunity to grow and develop. And of course, we have some really impressive animals to care for at the Minnesota Zoo. And also that Minnesotans really are prideful in the zoo and what it means to the community. And so being able to contribute to an organization that's so instrumental into the fabric of the Twin Cities was really something that interested me. So when a position came open to come up here to Minnesota, and particularly the position that I have, Director of Animal Care, I did everything I possibly could to make myself an excellent candidate for it. So,
well, Chicago's loss and Minnesota's gain, Kurt.
Much appreciated.
We're delighted that you made that decision to switch and pursue this stage of your career here with us in Minnesota. And I'm going to ask you to tell us about really what your role involves. But first, for our viewers, I want to give you an idea of, if you don't already know this, the Minnesota Zoo occupies almost 500 acres here in Dakota County. And they have some 500 species of animals, and total animals altogether about 5,000. So when you look at all of these statistics, it makes the Minnesota Zoo the 5th largest zoo in the United States, which is quite impressive. So we know you have a big animal kingdom to rule over, Kurt. So tell us what your role is as Director of Animal Care.
So in my role, I really oversee the care of the animals all across the zoo. So all 5,000 animals, all 5,000 species. I really oversee the staff and those animals the animals and the staff that care for them. We have a large number of keepers within our zoo, nearly 90 keepers on our animal care staff. And then also some additional leadership positions called curators that oversee kind of a section of the zoo. Now, because we are so large, we have 6 different sections within our zoo, and 6 curators that oversee each of those areas, supervising up to 90 zookeepers. And those areas kind of range from the farm to our bird department, to our aquatics department, which is aquariums and marine mammals, and also our life support systems that supply healthy environments for those animals. We have our tropics and our Minnesota Trail area. We also have our ambassador animal collection, which is the ability, or animals that are uniquely programmed to have close connections with our guests.
Give us a couple of examples of those.
So some of those animals might include tamanduas. They might include.
What?
It's like an anteater. Like an anteater.
All right.
So we have prehensile-tailed porcupines that live in the Amazon rainforest. We also have a large part of our ambassador animal program that's dedicated to animals right here in Minnesota, and really trying to give that close-up experience to an animal that you may or may not encounter right here in our own backyard. So you're talking about fox snakes and hognose snakes, bull snakes, North American porcupines, opossums, raccoons, skunks. So really trying to focus a little bit about the animals that are in our own backyard and provide that venue to teach our guests about animals they might see in their own backyard.
So the ones you just named off this list, those are examples of ambassador animals?
Yeah, well, I mean, really any...
How do you prepare an animal to be an ambassador?
Oh, sure. What I was going to say is really all of our animals are ambassadors at the zoo. Yeah. And so they all represent their wild counterparts to try to connect our guests to animals they may or may not be able to see every day. But the animals that we have that are particularly in our ambassador program, it's really just kind of a training program to get them comfortable being around people, whether it's up close and personal, being on a table for presentation, doing a particular act in a show. We do have a daily presentation with some of our ambassador animals for an audience. And so it might be how to demonstrate a natural behavior like climbing on a tree trunk, but climbing from here to here that really kind of demonstrates that behavior. So it's a lot of staff time, it's a lot of animal training and behavior that goes into it, and really getting that animal comfortable in whatever setting we're trying to present them in.
Well, this is fascinating, Kurt. We're going to have a great conversation here. Let's start with how you source animals. How do you decide what animal you want to have at the zoo, and how do you go about finding them and getting them into the zoo? Start with that.
Sure. So every year at the zoo, we go through a process of what we call an institutional collection plan. It's something that's required for us by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is also, an acronym is AZA, and it's an accrediting body that we have to go through a rigorous accreditation period every 5 years. So there's a set of inspectors that come to the zoo every 5 years, go through our entire program, the entire operation, and say, check, you are at the highest status of animal care. Unfortunately, the Minnesota Zoo has been accredited year after year, and we just went through that process last year. So
congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's quite an undertaking, and you never take it for granted, and you're always trying to strive to improve. So that institutional collection plan is kind of where we decide what does a collection look like for a particular area in the zoo? What are our new conservation initiatives? What are our new education initiatives? What are we trying to communicate to our guests, and what are we trying to connect with them and build empathy for? And so that kind of process, really, we try to get everyone at the zoo to have some sort of buy-in, because it's not only just the care staff that has to care for these animals, it's the education department that has to program for it, it's our marketing team that utilizes our incredible animals to promote the zoo and try to create anticipation for our guests to come there. So really everyone kind of buys into that and has some input of, wouldn't it be really great if we did this? Or I have a great idea for an exhibit here. What can we build and what animals can help support that? And then most of the time we work with other zoos and aquariums throughout the country to acquire these animals. We participate in different programs within that AZA that I mentioned that are species survival plans, or kind of breeding plans, breeding recommendations, because nearly all those species that are included in those species survival plans are animals that we want to have a sustainable population for in the future. Some of them might be endangered in the wild. Others might just be trying to create a sustainable population within human care, so that way we have these animals to display and connect to our guests for a long time.
So do you trade and borrow animals from other zoos that are in this association? Is that part of the process?
Exactly. There's a lot of science that goes into it, and really they're looking at genetic diversity within the population. They're making recommendations of this male should pair up with this female, and this male might be in San Diego and this female might be in Minnesota. So how do we put those two together?
So you have a dating website for the animals then?
It seems something like that, doesn't it?
Well, this is really complex. So you've explained a little bit about the process of how you go about deciding what animals you're going to have housed at the zoo, and a little bit of the process about how you go about getting them, what some of the sources are, other zoos and places like that. So how do you decide how many animals you're going to have at any one time? I mean, it probably varies. We say it's around 500, but it varies a little bit. Seasonal and things like that?
Not so much seasonal. Well, maybe a little bit depending on the area. For example, our farm, we do have a kind of a farm baby season in the spring. So the number of animals on the farm will significantly increase during the months of March, April, May. And that's just for the new additions that join us on the farm in the spring. But for the most part, I would say our collection as a whole kind of stays pretty stable in that 5,000 animal range. But again, depending on the species, that may fluctuate with, as animals get older or new animals are born at the zoo. And then really there's always those opportunities as well to provide homes for animals that are in need of rescue. Sure. For example, we brought in two northern sea otters at the end of 2013 that were rescues from Alaska. And so we will routinely get calls to say, we have this animal that is a rescue and is in need for a home. It's not suitable for rehab and release back to the wild. Do you have the ability to care for the animal? So we like to take those opportunities that we can either help support animals that are in need of rehabilitation and release back to the wild, or are in need of rehabilitation and need a forever home.
So let's work with the 5,000 animals. Are all 5,000 of them always on exhibit or on display, or do you have to cycle some through and keep some in reserve?
A majority of our animals are out on exhibit so our guests can see them, but there is a portion of our animals that either live behind the scenes, whether they might be part of a breeding program and they do better in a quiet space, or we have a surplus of a particular animal and maybe the exhibit's not big enough to house that entire population that we have. Or like, for example, our ambassador program, much of those animals are used for programming throughout the day, either on-site or off-site. We have
like the bird shows, is
yeah,
that example
bird
of that?
Bird show, or any of our shows. But we also have educational programs. Sometimes our educators will take animals out to schools, to classrooms, to assisted living facilities, hospitals, et cetera, to kind of help, to spread that love for nature wherever people might be. And really that's focused on people that don't have the means to get to the zoo or don't have the ability to get to the zoo.
Sure.
So because those animals are used for programming on-site or off-site, those kind of have a dedicated off exhibit space just so it doesn't affect the guest experience for those that do come to the zoo.
So an example of that would be for you to bring an animal onto the program here with us on Access to Democracy, which we may do at some point in the future. Kurt, let me ask a couple of geeky or trivia kinds of questions, okay?
I'll do my best.
What is the smallest animal the Minnesota Zoo has?
The smallest animal we have is probably not an exhibit animal, but it would be like a feeder animal, like a cricket.
Okay.
Or
Oh,
even a
I
fruit,
see.
or even a fruit fly.
Okay, let's deal with what you would have on,
well,
that
on
I
exhi-
could
on
go there and
exhibit.
see.
That's an excellent question. It's probably going to be some of our small fish. We have something like a clownfish, or we have
Seahorse?
we do have some seahorses as well. We have some really cool, some neon gobies or cleaner gobies in our shark reef, and which is really incredible because you have a large shark reef that features sand tiger sharks that are 7-8 feet long, and then you'll see these little small cleaner fish that are going into their gills and cleaning that don't bother the sharks at all. So they're kind of that little Easter egg in that large habitat.
We see that on some of the nature programs
Yep.
sometimes. Okay, now I'm going to take you to the other end of the
Sure.
scale. What's the largest animal you have there?
The largest animal we have is our. I want to make sure that I'm doing everyone justice, but it's going to be our bison. So
Okay,
our male
okay.
bison can be upwards of 2,000
which is
pounds.
a native animal to Minnesota, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and we actually participate in the Minnesota bison conservation herd, and so we participate with some of the state parks within the state and move animals around to, again, create kind of those breeding opportunities to make sure those populations are sustainable going forward.
One more geeky question. What's the most cantankerous animal you have at the zoo? Or the most difficult to care for, maybe is a way to phrase it.
Well, difficult is not, I don't necessarily think it's the word, but we do have a large Japanese macaque troop, or snow monkeys, that are right in the heart of our zoo. And we have one of the largest populations, if not the largest population in the U.S. of Japanese macaques.
Is that right?
And so,
Yeah.
and so because of that size and that population, they are highly social animals. But as we all know, that range of social can go from everyone is cohesive and working well together to factions within the group where, they're kind of
They have clans
they
within
do.
in that?
Yeah, so they kind of have that separation. So trying to get them to all work together as a group sometimes can be a bit challenging.
How do you do that? How do you get monkeys to cooperate with one another?
You do your best with what you have, and again, they can be pretty challenging. The main things that we need to do from a care standpoint day to day with them, we are able to do through cooperative training. So really coming in off their exhibit, coming into their holding space, so we can service both those areas. But as far as cooperative behaviors with them, sometimes the social hierarchy takes precedent.
So your role there, Kurt, is quite comprehensive, it sounds like, in all of the responsibilities that you have. So how do you prioritize all of those responsibilities?
Luckily, I have an excellent staff, really experts, skilled, knowledgeable staff that know the animals that they care for really well. They know the species really well. They know how to provide these incredible welfare situations for the animals. And so I really rely heavily on that staff. Again, as we mentioned before, large staff, a lot of people, and so a lot of people focused on really just providing the best care and the best lives we possibly can for the animals that we are really honored to take care of every day. And so I rely heavily on them 100%, because as you mentioned, the range of what I do every day is, going from an HR perspective to a PR perspective to animal care perspective. And so unfortunately, there's not enough time in the day to oversee every single one of those aspects. And so, again, great trust on my staff.
Well, we've had a couple of other guests from the staff of the zoo on the program. The nutritionist was our first guest, and she talked about the dietary role that she has in preparing diets and menus for the animals, which is really kind of more focused responsibility. And then we had a guest who was one of the veterinarians at the zoo, and she talked about the role of healthcare for the animals. But your role seems to go all over the places, right?
A little bit. My kind of area of oversight is really the care aspect. So the daily husbandry or daily care of the animals, feeding, cleaning, training, et cetera. But we have other areas within the zoo that also help support that. You mentioned Kelly Cappan, who's our nutritionist. And so if we have a question about a diet for a particular animal or need some insight of adjusting a diet because maybe something's not agreeing with an animal, she's our resource and the person that we go to say, hey, let's try to troubleshoot this. And our veterinarian team, animals just like us, they get sick from time to time, regardless of the situation or the season or the care that we're providing with them. And so our animal health staff is integral to providing the top care for these animals. And of course, with it's animals that live in zoos and aquariums. With human care, we're seeing animals live longer and beyond their normal life expectancy in the wild. So with that comes geriatric care, and so it's not something that is usually associated with animals, but animals age just like we do.
Senior care for animals.
Senior care for animals.
Like for human beings.
Absolutely, you see things like arthritis and heart problems and things like that you would normally see or that we're familiar with people. Cancer, is another thing that comes to mind. Things that you wouldn't necessarily observe with animals in the wild. Any animal that is really in the wild that's compromised by any means is usually one that is preyed upon or et cetera. So for animals that kind of extend beyond that life expectancy at the zoo, it's kind of a whole new area of veterinary medicine that's just, I don't want to say come to light in recent years, but there's a large emphasis that's been put on it in recent years.
Well, I think that's important for our viewers to know how really important you value the animals and their lives and their contributions to the experience that one has when they visit the zoo. So what are some of the things you talk about with your staff when you say, how can we make a person's visit to the zoo memorable, make their experience extraordinary? What are some of the things that you talk about and plan for and do to help accomplish that?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to take care of these animals every single day. And I think for my staff and with the guest perspective in mind, the guest experience in mind, just to think back of for most of us where our career started. And it really probably didn't start the day we were hired. It was started when we were a kid and we visited that institution and saw that that lion or that dolphin or that ambassador animal up close and personal and went eye to eye. That really kind of sparked that imagination, that curiosity. And so I would, for my staff, I hope that they look at their animals, the exhibits that the animals are in, which are their homes, and we're creating it in such a way that we're creating those moments for our guests as well every single day.
How much does it cost to care for the animals at the zoo? What's the range of your budget, Kurt?
That is a really good question. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go into our budget at the zoo. Our number one is obviously the care staff that helps care for those animals. But some of our animals, our most expensive animal to feed on an annual basis is our sea otters. They're not the largest animal at the zoo.
But they eat a lot?
But they eat a lot. They have a really high metabolism. They're the only marine mammal that doesn't rely on fat or blubber to help insulate them. They have a really thick coat, fur, and so it's actually the thickest fur of any animal on the planet. They have roughly 1 million hairs per square inch on their body.
Well, that's an interesting statistic.
It is. I think we have 150,000 hairs or so on our head as a whole, and they have 6 times that in a square inch, all throughout their body. And so that really thick coat helps insulate them, but also they have a really high metabolism. So they eat about 20 to 25% of their body weight every single day. And I will say that the sea otters, they are a ritzier of the animals. They're eating squid.
They're picky eaters?
They're
Is that what you're saying?
They like the good stuff, let's just say that. But squid, shrimp, clam, and so it can be roughly $15,000 to $20,000 per year to feed a single sea otter.
That's remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
That's remarkable. So that means you have a pretty large budget to operate the zoo. So, without going into the numbers specifically, how is the zoo supported? I mean, what are the sources of revenue or support for the zoo?
So our largest support of revenue is our gate. So the guests that come to visit the zoo and support us each and every day.
So the price of a ticket to get in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so the zoo, fortunately, had the highest number of visitors last year in its entire history. Nearly 1.5 million people came to the zoo last year, which is a pretty incredible number. And so those people that come every day, those are our biggest supporters. We're also a state agency, and so we do have some state appropriations that help support our daily operations. And then we also have another arm of the zoo, which is, because we are a state agency, we also have a nonprofit arm, which is the Minnesota Zoo Foundation. So that is our, funded by our donors and, real large-scale contributors to the zoo, the people that really believe in the mission that we are sharing every day.
Well, I hope that our viewers here on Access to Democracy are listening and that they are supporters of our great zoo here in Minnesota. Kurt, in the last couple of minutes to wrap up our program, are there any plans in the works for something new and exciting that's going to be coming to our Minnesota Zoo here in the near future, this year, next year maybe?
There's a lot of things that are exciting and in the works. We recently just went through a strategic planning process and a long-range facility planning process that hopefully will have some excellent things come to fruition in the next 5 to 10 years. Our next immediate thing, we've had some recent upgrades. We had our prairie dog exhibit, which has been shut down for the last couple of years, that just reopened. We have some California sea lions that recently just joined us in Discovery Bay in our kind of oceanarium space. And then next year, we have a large-scale project where we're going to redo that Japanese macaque exhibit that we talked about, which will be really incredible once it's done. So lots of exciting things happening, and hopefully you can encourage your visitor, your watchers to visit us throughout the years.
Yes, we want to do that. And Kurt, it's exciting, it's informative to have you and other members of the zoo staff visit with us here on Access to Democracy to share your experiences, to share all of this fascinating information about how the zoo really works and the value that it brings to our community. So we welcome all of the visitors who want to come to the Minnesota Zoo. Kurt, thank you for the great job that you and your staff are doing out there. We appreciate that. Thank you for watching Access to Democracy and hearing these stories from our guest, Kurt Heizmann, the Director of Animal Care at the Minnesota Zoo. Thanks for watching Access to Democracy.